Hey everybody, welcome to Currency Roundtable number 5. We are here with Ontario 100. Hello, Ontario.
Hello there, and thanks again for joining us.
And we've got Stuplubak Currency. Stu's in the house, back from Vegas, baby.
I survived and I brought souvenirs.
Nice. And Dustin Witty, fresh off the truck. He's been working hard, literally. We were starting this recording with Dustin driving. We won't say that anymore, though.
I made it home safe. You got lucky.
Safe and sound. Awesome. Well, today's subject, folks, is we're going to talk about large size currency notes. And if someone came up to one of us, and let's say they were a new collector, or worse, a coin collector, and they wanted to have one note to start with, and we kind of said, well, let's start with large size notes. And then what would we recommend for large size notes? And we wanted to not tell each other our list. So we came up with a list of 10 each. Whether or not we'll get to all those probably won't happen. And that's not the point. The point is we're going to go in our little round table around the horn and throw out a large size note that would be like Ontario's going first. So he's going to throw out what he thinks he would recommend for his number one note. And if Ontario just happens to have my pick for number one note, I'm going to go to second on my list. So we're not going to duplicate. But there's a caveat to this, is that we want this to be, available for what everybody can afford. Meaning these notes are going to be, you can find them in the $100 to $300 range, the $300 to $600 range, and the $700 range to $1,000 or more. And again, most of them, if you want to spend a lot more money, you'll probably have a good opportunity to do that. You know that it's all based on condition and grade. That's what we're going, and that's really all we're going to do today, is sit around and, shoot the shit on large size notes, folks, because that's what we want to do. That's what we want this program to be about. All right, Ontario, you're up, my friend.
Okay, I like $2 legal tenders, large size legal tenders, series 1917. I think I would recommend that note. And you can get a star note version of that, which is a Freeburg 60. That's the most common star note for that series. And I went out on eBay today and I actually found one for just under $200. That's not graded. It's a fairly good looking note for the money. I also found one for $250. Now, of course, if you have a larger budget, you can get a nice graded one for $400 to $500.
Yeah.
So that would be my first note.
Any comments, gentlemen, on why?
Great stuff.
That brings up all kinds of neat stuff. First of all, you're talking about a $2 bill, and the whole reason a $2 bill even exists is because of horse racing. When you talk about the Kentucky Derby and how long that's been going on, and then you try to coincide that with how long we've been printing money, the whole point of horse racing's minimum $2 bet was to keep the riffraff out of the tracks. They wanted it for all the highfalutin people. So you're talking about a note with story, a note with history. That's why a $2 bill is so important, especially a large size note like that.
Yes. Very common to find them with the notes or the corners ripped off for bad luck. Dustin, any comments?
I like the star note aspect. I like large size star notes, but I'm right there in agreement with Ontario. You can find those large size stars, which are just, they're so historical, and you can find one for less than $200, less than $300. And it's not going to be a total rag like what Dan collects,
True. I'm not going to deny that at all. It is the most inexpensive large size $2 note, and it's got the classic look. Couple things that I wrote regarding that one. Just, you know what, it's do your best. If you're down here with me in my price range, try to get the best paper you can, because that makes that red really pop. All right, mine one is a little bit, well, that's not different. If I could recommend one note that's affordable in all three, it is the 1922 $10 gold certificate. I just think it's an awesome note. It's an affordable note. Most cost-effective gold, large size gold you're going to find. My hint with that is always turn the notes over on any gold certificates because that's the money part. All right.
You bet.
You want, if you're going to be wading in the, VF, the 12, 15, 20 area, like I do, you want to make sure that and be selective, and you can be. You'll find it. You will find it.
It's the Michael Hillegas note, right?
Michael, yeah, or Charlie Brown.
Am I the only one? If I am the only one on the planet, so be it. But I mean, that's just okay. I guess I am the only one.
I don't see it, but you know what, Steve? Sometimes I should look through your world with your eyes.
I don't know if it's just the simple white background with the gold and black on the front that just automatically, those are the Charlie Brown colors, the black and the gold, and then I see the big bulbous head. Yes, he's got hair, but he's got a little bit of a forehead there.
So Michael Hillegas, for anybody that doesn't know, he's the first treasurer of the United States, and he's so not known that they actually put that on the bill, the first treasurer.
Right.
So it's not like George Washington or anybody else. So that was kind of funny. Dustin, any comments on the $22 gold certificate?
I love what you said, and in Ontario and I actually had this conversation on the phone the other day. The gold certificates, the 10s and the 20s, flip those things over because that's where the money's made. The back of those, the earlier prints of them just have amazing ink, and it's not yellow. It's like a tangerine orange almost.
Okay, I gotta cut you off because I learned this term from our friend Ontario.
Okay.
I totally ripped it off from him. Here's the color name: goldfish orange.
Goldfish orange, yeah.
Goldfish orange.
I've heard that term. I've heard that term.
I heard it from Ontario, and I stole it.
Forgotten that I said that.
We're not shocked. Here I am beating up on the old guy, which I'm catching up to rapidly.
Yeah.
All right, Ontario, comments?
No, I think you guys have covered it. I still think it's awesome to think that you could take that note into a bank back then and walk out with one of these.
Yes.
That's still awesome to me.
I love that you have that. I mean, that's so awesome.
Well, I had an interesting question the other day. Someone asked me back, they said when gold certificates were in circulation, did people prefer them over silver certificates or Federal Reserve notes? I said, that's a good question. I've never heard where there was any preference from people. I heard that people would have a preference for gold and silver over paper, but I never heard whether there was a preference for a particular note. Have any of you guys?
I've never heard it. Anecdotally, probably makes sense though when you think about it. I mean, everybody's attracted to gold over silver over Federals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just are.
Yeah.
So, all right. That's it. All right, moving on. That is Mr. Stu.
Well, you knew what I was going to pick as my first note to
and I think
you knew that so well that you intentionally started with the 10 because I'm saying that 1922 $20 gold certificate. To me, that note is so beautiful. That is the note that kicked it off for me. You've got a large size note featuring George Washington, which is mind-blowing. You have a gold certificate, which most people aren't aware of. You have a large size note. You have the incredible backs that we're talking about. And when we're talking about price on these, I know I'm just being spoiled because the one that I have, the one that I show, the one that I've gotten graded, I bought for $125. So yes, I've had the note for 8 years or whatever the case is, but my initial purchase price on that note was $125. Yes, it's probably worth easily twice that right now, but still, even at twice that, we're still in that bottom range.
Yes.
And mine's a 25. Here's one thing that we didn't really talk about, and which is the grades themselves. If you are not looking for perfection, I would personally recommend gearing yourself toward that number 20. And the reason for that is because virtually every price guide that you see out there is going to give you a value for a 20. So now, since your note is a 20 and the book says it's a 20, yeah, it doesn't mean that that's what it's worth, but at least you're in the same ballpark versus if it gives you the price for a 20 and your note is a 15, or it gives you the price of a 20 and your note is a 35. Now you have to do crazy math to try to figure out actual value. And when it comes to the eye appeal of the note itself, 20s are a good enough condition where you're going to see everything available on the note, yet the note's still going to have a little bit of handling on it. So to me, that's just the ideal grade for collecting is 20. And then from there, that's where you scale it up or down based on your own personal budget.
Right.
I love that you said that one. That's the first one I was going to say, but I knew you'd beat me to it. I love on that. You know, I've shown you the star that I have, and I've got older videos where I showed you just a basic one, and the portrait of George Washington and the ink. You know, that really really dark ink they use on that. That's like you said, it's one of the most beautiful notes ever printed.
Yeah,
And that's what I love about it. And you know, the price point. I bought one the other day that was kind of a rag and stuff, and I ended up paying like 150, 175 bucks for it. It was in a group of notes, but that's where I can group it. And I turned around and sold it for 225.
yeah,
You know, and it's just there. I call that very affordable when you're talking about a note of that caliber. You know,
yes.
Yes.
I'd agree.
Absolutely.
Ontario?
I think it's been said. I would just echo what Dustin said. You get a lot of quality for a little bit of money, really.
Okay. That brings us back to Ontario, right?
no, I got
Oh, that's right. We got Dustin. We got Dustin. You're so easy to forget about.
a quick one on me there. So I've got to go with the 1917 Sawhorse, the $1 legal tender. You know, you guys can go ahead and cross it off your list. I'll take care of it. Okay.
No, I have it on mine. I really do.
I have it
So-
on mine, sort of.
Sorta. Okay. Well, so they started doing that, I believe, in what 1860 something, 1867.
69, the Rainbow Series was the first design.
So they started doing that, but the one that I think is affordable and just super iconic is that 1917 legal tender. It's called a Sawhorse because of the back of it, and I like notes with nicknames. You know, I think Stu, you do too, right? Notes with
I've got a
nicknames,
whole list on them. Yep.
right? So I like them. I've got a soft spot for that series because I pieced together the entire series, and I got super familiar with the Freeburg numbers, the FR36, and what was rare and what wasn't. And what's cool about that series is you can go get that VF20, VF25 for like 150 bucks or less in some cases, and you're going to get a stellar note. You know, I've talked with some of you guys here recently. I'm selling off some notes, and you can even get into some of the star notes for less than 350 in that series. And I mean, these things are graded mid-tier VF around the 25, 30, 35 range. So it's a great series to get into. And even if you step it up to that XF, to that 40 or 45 range, you're still only going to be paying about $300, $350.
Yeah, that's such an interesting note because, like you guys started off saying, that design came into play in 1869. So, with the exception of the rainbow pattern, you're talking about a note that's what 1869, 79, 89, 99, 2009, almost 50 years running with the exact same pattern. So when you consider that is a 20th century note, a 1917 is a 20th century note, yet it looks nothing like anything from the 20th century because it's clearly mid 19th century in design.
Yeah.
That's just such a way to reach back into the past and own a piece of the past like that without having to reach back that far. And for price point, like you said, how easy can you make it to get something like that? So yeah, a great choice like that. That's for sure.
No, I'm still amazed at the notes that are still around. I mean, how many of these things are still available for collectors in general? I'm speaking, and while we're talking about the large $1 bill like that, they're very plentiful. So don't be afraid to look for one.
Mhm.
Well, in my 2 cents, it is, you guys have alluded to it, it is the most inexpensive large size you can get. Period.
Oh yeah.
Here's one other aspect about that particular note, since we are talking about the price being what it is. If I recall, that note has many different signature combinations.
Many.
So now you're talking about a note that a new collector can actually go after all of those different signature combinations
Yeah.
without costing them the price of a brand new car.
So-
So it depends on how you like to collect. If you are a person who wants those different, combinations like that, here is your note.
Nice point. Great point.
Yep. I put together the entire signature set, all the Freebirds, and like, I mean, I can venture, I guess I would say that I spent less than $1,000 on all the non-stars.
I'm
Well, I
not-
think the next one I would throw out is, and I have kind of just a general definition here, is a $5 or a $10 national. Just a average national note. I know some of them can get quite expensive depending on what state or city you're in, but check out your state. Many of them are quite affordable, and a lot of history there, a lot of stories behind those notes.
The Nationals is a whole other world. And
yeah.
it's interesting that you said check out your state, because then
Yeah.
you start talking about the local bump, and
Yeah.
it's almost better to get a random town, because you're going to find one much cheaper than you would going locally. But yeah, nationals are fascinating, because not only can you collect the different denominations, the different years, there are different types. There's the plain back, there's the date back, there's the denomination back, and these are all just the third series. Then there were second series
Yeah.
with the brown backs, and the first series. I mean, there's just so many different ways to go with nationals, as well as people collecting from these specific banks, or because they like a particular number. And I know that sounds weird, but I believe it was our buddy Silver Surfer who has national banknotes from the first charter, the second charter, and the third charter number notes. Yes.
So you've got the king or queen of all the note. What I think is all of the notes of the nationals, and that's the first charter Lazy Deuce, the two.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that one I've got. It's graded an 8 net, and I don't care.
Dustin?
I love the choice there. Like, there was a time back years ago where it's like, I'm going to get all the nationals. I'm just going to do it.
Everybody has thought that once.
And it's a cool thought. And, Ontario said it really well. You really, really need to look at your state, and I've told you guys, I've mentioned this in past videos, in Arkansas here, you can grab you about 10 or 12 and they can be affordable, and you can get the 5 and the 10 and spend less than $200, which is really awesome. And then all of a sudden you see the Green Forest note or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's $4,700 and I can barely even read it, but every state has those. But yeah, I like the idea of a national being on this list. They're so cool. There's so much history there.
I mean, for me, that was high on my list. The 1902 $5 national banknote, third charter, third issue, blue seal specifically, but Ontario, great choice and great with the $10. That's right behind it, the $10. The 20 is the one that starts to move up, and the 50 becomes, well, I'll never have a 50. I'm just saying.
I was looking through the book too. Even the 20s, the second issue and the third issue is, it starts at 175, moves up to 200. You don't hit anything over 300 until you get to the VF20, at least on the second issue. So.
And yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I am a homer for Minnesota. I only collect them, and you should see my nice, maybe it's a 10. I screw myself on my own grading. I'm tough. Maybe it's a 12, but it's not it's kind of a dirty note. But it's tough to find Minnesota notes. And when you do find them, what's weird is that a lot of small towns with cool names like Moose Lake, Keister, Starbuck, they made a lot of the notes. And so they're out there, and the name itself just drives up the price. Then, yes, Stu, you hit it. That stupid bump of being local where, I was in California and found my 20 for, $150 less than what I could buy it in state here.
Yes,
yeah.
Stu's right. Buy it outside your state. Don't buy it where you live. Find it somewhere else if you can, or online.
Love a little history with this note. Benjamin Harrison's on the 5. He's the president in between Grover Cleveland's 2 non-consecutive terms, whose grandfather was William Henry Harrison, who lasted a whopping 31 days as president. So a little bit of history and why he's on that, because guess when he died?
1902.
I mean,
01, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
they put him on. If you have a national, if your hometown national, and it actually has a national bank that issued currency, I would put that on my bucket list like there's no tomorrow. That's like the ultimate to have a national from your hometown, in my opinion. Okay.
Especially there's only like 8 of them in existence.
Well, that's money.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
you see, and that sounds obscene to some coin collectors. How can you possibly buy a 1 of 8? But we're talking currency, and yeah, this is the world we live in. We can do that.
Yep.
And it may be expensive, but not nearly as expensive as it should be.
Yes, well said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need the Hubble telescope to look at it. All right, I'm up. That means, Steve, you're on deck.
Okay.
All right. Mine is the 1918 $1 Federal Reserve banknote, large size.
Cool.
I just like it. I love the design. I just for a large size note, it is different, but yet it has a lot of qualities that you see. Portraits off to the left. That's not unusual for large size currency, but it just looks different. The large center bank and denomination block, just a great note. And then the back, the flying eagle, the green eagle, whatever you want to call it, carrying that flag, the vignette on the back is just, it's one of my favorite eagles out there. So make sure, again, flip that note, make sure, and Steve, I love it that you say that. You say it a lot, and it should be said every time. That's where you're going to see the problems. Most of the problems with your notes is on that.
Right. For some reason, on the backs of the notes, it always shows.
And the history behind that note, by the way, this is my last point on this, and I'm going too long, but any of the FRBNs, the large size, the 1915s, 18s, have an unbelievable history that is directly tied into the 1921 Peace Dollar and Morgan Dollar. Believe it or not, it is tied together. And the fact that they were created specifically, like Steve pointed out, they were backed by the local Federal Reserve District Bank, just like the national banks were. Same premise, but they were meant to be replacing the national banknotes. The BEP and the Treasury wanted to get rid of national banknotes in the around 1910, 12. So it took them a couple of years to cook up the idea. That's why it says national currency. So anytime I talk about FRBNs of any kind, this is not a national banknote. It is a different currency all by itself, and it failed. No, it's a design. Anyway, so that's my pick. That's my second pick. Comments?
Yeah.
Dustin, we'll go to you.
I've always liked the Green Eagle. That's always been my big draw. At one point I wanted to get the 1, the 2, the 5, the 10 and everything. And I haven't ever succeeded or really had the passion. Or my dog's freaking out here.
Monty, no, you cannot be mean to Monty. I will not tolerate that on this currency run.
Up here, get him to hold still. Jeez.
If I was in your lap, I'd be doing the same exact thing.
I'm sure you would. Some would be crushed. So with that note, it's a George Washington note, it's
Yep.
Washington on, and the big eagle on the back, and it's just kind of a really regal type vignette. I've always really liked that, and that's one of those notes that depending on the grade, you can get in a mint state one for what, like $800, $900.
If you want one of these, go with New York, go with Boston,
Yep.
the districts and Philadelphia. Those are going to be your three best price points.
Yeah.
You really think these large size notes now, guys, they're 100 years old, and many of them much, much older. And I just think something that's hot off the press or still has that look of hot off the press. But that's just so cool thinking it's that old and it's still that pristine.
Ontario?
No, I think you guys again have covered it. It's a lot of bang for your buck. It's an iconic note, iconic design. Well worth the money.
All right. Steve, you're up next. What do you got?
All right. What do I got? I have an interesting note because there's actually two varieties of this particular note. And the thing is, even though there are two varieties, two well-known varieties, there's no difference in price. And if there's no difference in price, get the unusual one. I mean, what else can I say? I'm talking about a $5 1907 wood chopper. The $5 wood chopper legal tender. It is a very iconic image. It's got the man on the front with his axe. He's got his dog. His wife is sitting next to him holding the baby. There's their log cabin in the background. It's true Americana. It is such a classic looking note. What makes this note so cool is on the back of the note. They go through all the words. This note is public and private, and this note, this, that, and the other. But in the engraving process, I want to say it was an engraving error. I initially thought it was a broken plate, but somebody corrected me and said that there was an engraving error in the word public. And what happened is that the U in public has a break in it. So instead of spelling public P-U, it looks like it says P-C. And that's what's known as the public error. So if you get a note that's in decent enough condition, you can flip it over on the back and try to discern whether you've got the public error or if you have the, I don't want to say corrected, but the correct version of the note. So when you start off with an iconic looking note and then you add a little bit of mystery onto the back, that makes it just that much more fun to go after in the first place. And then you talk about affordability, and I'm sure you'll jump through the book and let everybody know what we've got for prices on that. But yeah, I would most certainly encourage people to get themselves a wood chopper.
Yeah.
Great choice. Dustin?
I love the wood chopper. That was what I was about to say. So I've got to move down. Right. So with the wood chopper, that it's Americana in a note, like you said. The classic working man, supporting his family type stuff with the log cabin. It's got Andrew Jackson on it. You can look at his upbringing and kind of look if you know your history there and stuff. And he's Old Hickory, which that's kind of ironic too, being a wood chopper.
I never thought of that.
Very true.
That's awesome.
Here talking myself into thoughts. So
deep thoughts with Dustin.
Honestly, I try not to think too hard. That's one of the earliest notes I ever got on the large size scale. Is that wood chopper, and I think that probably holds true for a lot of people that start collecting large size notes. And it's just really one of the first true big time notes that a lot of people can get. And even a mid tier grade you can get for like $350, $400, and man, they just pop. The red on those is really, really well done, and the story with the public error is really awesome too. I've always liked the back of the notes. Somebody wrote an essay on the right side of that,
and just the way they shaped it. Yeah.
There's so much going on there.
Ontario.
Yeah, again, I think it's availability is what I would say. These notes are very easy to find if you're starting out. you go to a show or look online, you'll see plenty of them.
So this was on my list. Great pick, Steve. I mean, for me, it is again one of those classics, right? It's like Dustin, you alluded to. But what's the Ontario, you brought up the availability of this. And by the way, that because there was millions, I don't know how many, a lot. And
Yeah.
between that and the 1917 $1 legal tender note, by the way, these notes were printed up into the mid 1920s, even though they were
Yes.
printing the other $5, the new, blah, 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 silver certificate. They kept on printing them. And so there are millions of them. That was a long time for a large sized banknote to be issued. All right, Dustin.
Okay, you guys buckle in. I got a curveball
Oh,
for you.
wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I had to adjust.
All right. So this note I'm about to tell you is one that when I really sat and thought about this, it's like, oh my gosh, what a cool, iconic note to mention when we're talking about price point. And this is a true condition dictates price point thing. It's the 1862 $1 with Samuel Chase on it, the legal tender. All right. So did anyone have that on their list?
I did not.
Yeah, no, okay. So it's one
I
of those
did.
I love this note. So my favorite part about the note is Samuel Chase on it. And Dan, you and I have talked about that. What an interesting guy.
I mean, historically, he certainly is.
He
Lincoln
was
made a
campaigning
deal
for
and
president, wasn't he? Wasn't he trying to be president? I mean, wasn't that his
he
goal?
got exactly what he did want, actually. He got
Right.
to be Chief Justice of the
Yeah, Chief
United
Justice.
States Supreme Court.
Yeah, Chief Justice.
And that was Samuel Chase is the reason legal paper money existed. He made it work for the Civil War and the federal government during the Civil War. It was his idea. So he didn't want to be Treasury of the Secretary of Treasury. He didn't want it. Lincoln said, come on. He had only been a U.S. Senator for 2 days. Two.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And Lincoln convinced him. So there was a deal brokered. And what that deal was, when a Supreme Court position opens up, you give it to me. And in 1864, not only was the Supreme Court position, it was the Chief Justice. So fast forward 1870, somebody gets to the Supreme Court saying legal tenders are not constitutional. And he wrote the dissenting opinion, and his court said they are not constitutional and made them all legal. Wow. And it got overturned the next year. But it just ironic, really? Get what you want, and then anyways. Great pick. That was not on my list. But
I like it. Samuel Chase is such an interesting guy, but I also like
Salmon, by the way, Salmon, Salmon, Salmon Chase.
Yes.
Well, I'm down here in the South. We don't have any like phonetic rules down here in the South.
I just nope.
So you just sit there and relax and let me talk how I want.
I thought he was going to say we don't have any L's here in the South.
No,
I'm not going to say a word. I'm not saying a word.
So I like the Crittenton signature on that too.
Oh, Lucius, yes.
Yeah, and he's another interesting guy, but we won't go into any of that. But just regarding that note and like the price point, think about it like this: 1862. We're talking Civil War, and you can get those notes you can get them as rags for $150. But at the same time, if you want intact corners, they don't really have margins, but just a really intact note, you can get a VF20 for $400, $350, $400.
Oh, yeah.
And that's tons of history. Actually, it's probably less than that, to be honest. And you can even step it up even higher to that 40 and 45 range and still be well below $1,000 and have a stellar note. And there's so much history there, as we've said here and alluded to. But Steve, you're up. What do you think?
Well, you guys are also forgetting one of the key signatures on that note, which would be
Yes.
FE Spinner.
Oh.
FE Spinner, one of the most extravagant signatures you'll find on any of our currency. It makes me wish that that John Hancock had his signature on
Oh,
currency at some
yeah.
point, because that's
Wow.
just that's the caliber of signature you're
Well-
talking when you talk about spinners. Modern day calligraphy. Spinner, he was the Secretary of the Treasury at the time, I believe. And
Treasurer.
treasurer. He was the treasurer. Yeah, he was the treasurer, and he and Lincoln got together and came up with fractional currency during the Civil War. You see
Mhm.
his signatures there. A lot of those fractionals not only have his signature, but it's his actual autograph. I have a couple of the notes that he's got with that are actually autographed by him.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and if you are a strap searcher, if you search singles, that 1862 $1 note is the very first $1 bill.
Mhm.
How can you collect $1 bills and not have the very first $1 bill in your collection?
Right.
Yeah, great point. Ontario?
I think you guys have covered it. I mean, that's history, holding history in your hands. I mean, it's an iconic note.
Do we like? I have one. Anybody?
I've got 2 radars.
Of course you do.
Of course.
I got a VG. I got a good 6. Great.
I have a 35 EPQ.
Nice.
Nice.
That is
in
awesome.
in my hand. You'll probably be showing that one, but
Right.
So this is probably one of my lowest grade, best looking notes that I have is that $1 1862. And Steve, you're right on the money, man. You got to have the first $1 bill. I mean, it was not the first bill. The 5 was the first one to come out, but it was
Correct.
the very first one. How do you not have that? So
Correct.
anyways, all right. So that brings us back to Ontario 100.
All right.
Last round.
Last round. Well, since it's last round, I'm going to cheat just a little bit, but
Good.
I'm going to say this with if your budget is $200 or less, take a look at the blue seal large Federal Reserve notes, $5 and $10 bills, even a 20 you can find, for less than $200. If you have a little bit higher budget, $400 to $500 range, look at the red seals. Again, a large 1914 Federal Reserve notes. A lot of information there. You got Lincoln, you got Jackson, you got Cleveland, and then those wonderful backs with all the different scenes with Columbus and the Pilgrims and farming and industry and planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yep.
You get the idea.
No,
Right.
they are iconic. Let's go to Steve. Comment first.
Well, see, that is a real interesting series, whether it's the 5, the 10, the 20, because you're talking about an FRN, and whenever you hear FRNs, your brain initially should tell you that that's a green seal. But yet this entire series of FRNs, they started with a red seal and then quickly got rid of the red seal and switched it over to a blue seal. Well, a red seal indicates legal tender and a blue seal indicates silver certificate. So now we're talking about an FRN that should be green that they didn't even make green until they switched over to the small size notes. So yeah, it was interesting that you brought up the red size as well. Those are almost 10 times as valuable as the regular notes. So really, based on what your wallet is, should determine what you are getting. If you just want to get a really neat old 20, get the blue seal. But if you got a couple extra bucks to spend, maybe try to find a nicer 5 or a 10 red seal just because they're scarce.
Right.
I happen to I've got a beat up 10, but I mean, it's a red seal,
Right.
so
Red
that
seal.
is cool,
Yeah. Dustin?
I think what sticks out to me is the vignettes on the back. There's the vignettes are cool, but all the open space makes them pop even more. Let's see, which one has the ships? on it. Is that
20.
the
20.
that's 20? Yeah, that's my favorite back
And
on
that's
that
got kind of a nickname, the transportation note.
transportation,
Yes.
right? And that's always just stuck out to me is the lack thereof on the back and just those vignettes.
But for me, yeah, they are iconic to me. That was on my list for that, and primarily because they are affordable in whatever grade you can get. Great note, great pick, Ontario. Great. That leaves me, and that is the 1891 $1 Treasury note.
Dad, it, Dan. We
Well,
actually
I mean,
the other day.
yeah, I mean, it is, because nobody knows, who's on there, right? It's Edwin Stanton, Secretary of War to Lincoln. But what's
Lincoln, yeah.
bigger than that is that, these notes are affordable. Nobody really, they're also called coin notes because they were payable in coin, not gold, not silver, just coin. And what's cool to me is like you are owning a note that is part of the watermelon series.
Yeah.
And so by extension, I have a piece of a watermelon or a grand watermelon for that. And I just think that's really cool.
You have a slice of watermelon.
Well, maybe I got one seed. I got a seed.
Yeah,
of
okay.
That was our first dad joke, isn't it? Of
Yeah,
this series.
well,
Yeah.
I don't know, but man, he woke up and I don't know. So
Man, that's a great choice. That I was obviously going to go with that, but I've always been fond of the 1891 series. And when I was young, well, I'm younger
Yeah.
than young, but when I was in my younger days, I went to an auction and I bought my first auction note that I ever bought was a Stanton note.
mm,
And man, it was a rag. And man, I overpaid for it. But I had a Stanton note. I just thought that was so cool. And I don't have it anymore. I've since sold it. I should have kept it because it did mean a lot to me. But it had a nice tear at the top and it looked like it had been buried at one point in its life, but they are such cool notes and affordability is totally there. You can get those things if you will hunt for a good 15 or a 20. You can get that for less than $300.
yep. Yes, you can. Yep. Because I did. I mean, you can find them. Absolutely.
You guys were referring to the 1891. They also made the
Go with it.
1890.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. Say it, Steve.
Yeah, they also made the 1890, and the difference between the 1890 and the 1891 has to do with the back of the note. But whoever said that this was part of the series for the watermelon notes, I had never even considered that. I just never thought about this. So what an awesome selling point on the notes to have a piece of watermelon like that.
Good job, Ontario.
Yeah.
But it was
Welcome.
it was interesting because they changed the backs to add more negative space. They did that so that you could see the red and blue fibers on there, and the backs were extremely busy on the 1890.
Yep.
It's hard to explain, but I actually have a counterfeit of a chief note from 1899. And when you examine the counterfeit, actually, I have the 1862 $1 counterfeit as well. And when you examine the back of that note on the counterfeit, all the printing washes together because it's so fine and so tight. But because there is so much of that printing on there, your eye doesn't even notice it. So you would think having all that printing on there would make it harder to counterfeit, but it actually made it easier to counterfeit because your eye just would not focus on it. So that's why you guys are talking about the 1891, which I don't want to call it a corrected back, but it's the one that has the much more white on the back and much easier to see.
Well, and they were also doing that with silver certificates. They were doing it with the legal tenders. Anyways, but yes, to create that. And that's what I found. It's a great point, Steve, because what's so ironic is that they were moving and, I've got my Bureau of Engraving book, 100 years. They talk about that, but then they don't they go right to the 1896 educational series, and they cover every single millimeter with ink on both sides. So it's
Yeah.
funny that they were moving towards that. Then come the 1896, and then they went right back away from using all that ink. Great point.
Correct.
By the way, the front of that note, the 1890, has the big brown seal. So it's got a different seal on the front, but other than that, the note's identical. Comment, Ontario?
I like that whole series really, because it kind of well, for the most part, focuses on Civil War era people, generals and admirals, and I like all of them. I like the 1890 backs also. I guess I was thinking if we did a video sometime, that the number one note I regret selling, that might be a good video sometime. Mine would be the 1891 $10. I used to have one of those, and I sold it, but I wish I hadn't.
I mean, the whole series was so short-lived. It was a weird currency type. Nobody knows
Yeah.
really why.
Yep.
It was part of the Sherman and Silver Purchase Act.
Oh yeah.
By Senator Sherman, who was the brother. Here's the ironic history part. So the reason these notes exist is part of the Sherman Silver Act, and Sherman, senator from Ohio, was William Tecumseh Sherman's general. They were brothers, and they almost did a $500 bill.
Right.
In fact, the book shows
Right.
the $500 bill that they never issued, but they were dang close to getting finalized. So, all right, Steve, you are up, my friend, on last round.
All right, that's what I was trying to verify, because I've got one that you don't have a book on. I am going with, and maybe I'm playing outside the rules, but I am going with the $10 1860s Citizens Bank of Louisiana New Orleans Dix note.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, you're not. That's not outside the obsoletes. We're not outside the rules.
Oh.
Okay, because it's definitely an American note.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, before the federal government would print money, individual banks would print their own money. And the further away you got from that original bank, the less that particular bill was worth, because people didn't know if that bank was still in existence. So you've got the major city of New Orleans, huge trade area. People go down the Mississippi River on their barges to trade all their goods and services. Well, not services, but to trade all their goods. And they are hoping to get a bunch of money that they know is good. And some of the notes that they're talking about were from the Citizens Bank of Louisiana. Now, one of the things that made the $10 note so impressive was, well, everybody knows about the French Quarter in Louisiana. So there's a lot of French influences on these notes. And on the back of this note is the word 10 written in French, which is D-I-X. So these became known as Dix notes, and they developed this cute little nickname called Dixies. And all the traders would go down to New Orleans hoping to stuff their pockets full of Dixies. And of course, where do you go to find Dixies? Well, you go to Dixieland. This is the note that gave the South the nickname Dixieland. Every reference book I've ever come to points to this particular note, and it's in the top 100 of all notes to be collected. I think it might be one of the very few obsolete notes that are in the top 100. And as far as the affordability, I know you wouldn't have the price guide. That's why I went and got mine real quick.
Thank you.
According to Obsolete Paper Money, A Guide with Prices by Don Kelly, this book, this one here in very fine is $350, and in new uncirculated, you're talking $600. Now, granted, this book is a little bit outdated, but still, that gives you a range to go by.
Awesome pick. And I did, it just makes sense. I mean, nothing carries really quicker than music and the river, to be honest. And the whole irony about that Dixieland. Abraham Lincoln had it played at his campaign rallies. He loved it. So
Right.
just a footnote on history on that. Anyway,
Yeah.
so Dustin.
Being down here in the South, like we covered so blatantly earlier. So being down here, these are notes. I consider them, they're not common, but they're pretty close to being common, and we can, like right now, I know where two of them are right now within about 30 miles. And both of them are graded, and I'm sure they can both be purchased for $300 to $350 or so. They've got really cool colors on them too,
Great colored notes.
That orange color, it's really, really neat. And just the way that they did their lettering and stuff, there's just a really clever, fancy, old school vibe about those notes. And that's a great pick, Steve. I like it.
Great pick.
It's interesting you're talking about how many are around in the area, because I went to the Schaumburg show, the ANA show in Schaumburg.
Yeah.
And I hit every single table there, and there were two at the entire show.
Wow.
Yes, two. So I had to buy the one that I found there because there were two. So for you to say that there are that many around there, start scooping them up, putting them online, because you won't find them anywhere. Go look online now. There aren't any.
Really? I bet in my lifetime, I've held 15 of them or so.
Two.
Two.
Wow.
I've ever seen.
There you go.
Steve's video is as close as I ever got. All right, last note of the show.
I think it's glaring obvious one we've missed, and it's actually number 10 on my list, is the 1899 $1 Black Eagle.
Yeah.
And it's a note that spreads through a lot of Freeburg numbers. If you want to hunt something that's exceptionally rare, go after the 229A. If you want to just get a standard, Black Eagle, heck, you can go get one for $100, $125, and it still have pretty good paper, and it still have, all of its corners and everything. But the best part about the Black Eagle series is, to me, when you hit that like 40 range, 45 range, that is premier paper, where it's like, it's circulated. You're not paying $1,200 for it, but man, that note looks good. It's a showstopper. You can throw it out in front of a crowd, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" Tell me about it. The definition of the feathers of the eagle have always been really captivating to me, and it's a $1 silver certificate. It's a true piece of art, and I've always loved and had a soft spot for those. It's one that a lot of people really go after and try to upgrade their entire life and finally get to that mint state version.
Ontario, comments?
No, I mean, that's an iconic note. It's often the first note people purchase when they start collecting large notes.
Man, and Steve, I mean, this because again, I developed my man crush, 4 or 5 whatever years ago on you. But yeah, you would point out, look at that blue pop.
Yeah.
Right.
And with that Black Eagle, being that contrast and the iconic scene, it's got the Capitol in the back, it's holding onto the flag,
Two
Two
presidents.
Yeah, and two presidents.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. I thought it was interesting how Dustin brought up about the paper itself. If you get a nice, version of that white paper with the Black Eagle, the paper almost shines the Black Eagle. I mean, it just really, really highlights that. That note in particular.
But that's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
That note when they're in that grade where it's like they shine and they just pop. It's almost like a holograph or three-dimensional in a way.
Yeah, the Black Eagle, that's the one that I did my con to con video on, where the guys came through trying to buy up everything from people. They put an ad in the paper and bring all your stuff and we'll give you top dollar. And I actually I turned the tables on them and I said, well, have you bought anything? Let me see what you bought. and the guy brought out a Black Eagle that was just amazing, and it's just ridiculous quality on there. And I said, "What do you need for it?" He said, "I got 60 in it. You can give me 65. That way I show a profit."
Oh,
I
wow.
handed him 4 $20 bills. He had to scramble for change. So not only did I get this Black Eagle that's graded like 35 or 40 for 60 bucks, in change, he gave me, what was it? I think it was like 5 Red Seal $2 bills. And just because he had nothing else to give me in change.
Well, hopefully they were
Oh,
trinaries.
I don't know. You guys can check the video on that. But I ended up sending that bill in to get graded. That's my keeper bill.
That's a great story. Con, getting conned.
Yep.
Awesome. So that's awesome. And I'm going to throw out a question to our audience, because we basically went through only not even a third of our list, really, when you think about it. I've still got 6 notes. Would you like to see this again? Put it in the comments, please. Because we can bring back and do a little large size. We had talked about doing small size. Also, we could go back and forth. What's our audience looking for? I did a poll, all right, 3 weeks ago after our last video. I was very curious after seeing some of the comments that it kind of, I had 80 people respond, and thank you for responding. What percentage, the question is, what percentage of your paper currency collection have you purchased from eBay? And I was stunned until I started talking to you guys about it. But, it basically 0%, 1 to 25%, 26 to 50, 51 to 75, 76 or higher. And how it broke down was 33% said 0. Wow. And 23% said 2 to 25, and 13% said 26 to 50. And, why, there's audience, there's age, there's things like that. But folks, only a third of the people that are watching this, or at least responded to the poll, buy their notes on eBay. And my question that I'd like to, little banter for us, is what shocked me about that is that I'm like, you guys, folks are missing out on the opportunity to buy different notes, because unless you live in a totally different world than I do, and I know most people do, but as far as currency world,
that's mental, Dan. We've had this time.
But when you're looking at, if I'm in a good market, and I've been to markets that had decent currency, they still don't have the selection. Not even close. Not even close. So thoughts on that, gentlemen?
eBay's the first place I look. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, because without having eBay, I wouldn't have hardly anything at all in my collection. Whenever I hear a story about a note, whenever I learn about a note, eBay is my first destination, just to get an idea of the availability of a particular note. Now, I know a lot of people don't trust what they see on eBay, and I frankly probably contribute to that by showing all the eBay scammers that I find. But keep in mind that eBay is full of a lot of good people selling a lot of good stuff. Do your homework and protect yourself that way. Make sure, just trust but verify. That's the best way to go. But I also find it interesting based on our demographic. If you have not signed up for eBay within the last 20 years, I could not tell you how to sign up for eBay today. I'm sure it can't possibly be hard, but I signed up for eBay 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So if anybody asks me, can I talk you through how to sign up for eBay? No, I can't, because I did it 20 years ago and I have no idea what the process is now. I'm not saying that it is a hard process. I'm simply saying I don't know the process. And when you're talking about doing processes for people that are 60, 70, 80 years old, I can understand them not wanting to jump through those hoops, because technology can be scary. I mean, I know I am not the most technological savvy person.
I get it. And then I look at our friend, and I'm not making fun of Ontario. It's just, you're in that, almost that demographic, not quite Ontario, but thoughts on that, Ontario?
Well, as I said, eBay is the first place I look. I've also met some awesome sellers on there. You know, you buy notes from them over and over again. Many of them I've learned have their own private websites. So sometimes you can use that angle to save yourself some money. But again, I learned all that because of the contact from eBay. So
Well, exactly.
the
Dustin?
selection is phenomenal on there.
Yeah, just I'm holding the note here for a reason because you guys all know I'm fascinated with blue, but I've got a kind of tripped across this Canadian currency, and I'm in this love affair with orange. So
Wow.
I'm putting together an orange collection, and so if it wasn't for eBay and looking for other notes for a video that I've got coming up, but all of a sudden I'm like, to get the first Bank of Scotland $1 note from 1949, that's orange. And I mean, this just,
Oh,
I
wow.
would never have known about it. I would have never have a clue. And this is a total one-off. Well, it's a total one-off note, but to me, it's so cool. And so that's where I'm like, folks, if you're not on eBay, at least looking, finding out, you're missing out. Your local shops do not have anywhere near the selection. And that's what it actually kind of makes me sad, to be honest, because you're missing some great notes. And I think the risk is very low because I don't think all four of us would use eBay the way we use it without, I have never, the worst I've gotten burned is I didn't get a shipment. It disappeared and I didn't lose the money. So
Same
aside
thing
from
here.
that.
I had one shipment, that didn't show up, but I got the money back.
So that's
Yeah, Ontario brought that up with our last video that eBay does give a little bit of a warranty, a little bit of a guarantee when you're buying stuff. So you should be able to buy with confidence on eBay. You have to open your eyes up to eBay. It's free to sign up for an account, and once you sign up for an eBay account and start browsing through there, it's not going to take you long to hit that bid button or that buy button. That's for sure.
No, it won't take you long at all.
So anyways, I just wanted to say, find a way, folks. If you're obviously not using a computer at all, you're probably not watching us. And that's why I'm like, I think our audience is a little more high tech because they're watching YouTube videos.
Right.
That to me is like, okay, you're missing out. All right, enough of that. We've got our notes. Let us know, folks, for comments on, do you want this again? We're planning to come back with small size. I think there's still a lot of good notes. Do you like this format? We pretty much said make a list. We're just gonna wing it from there, throw it out and go from there. So, gentlemen, anything else that you have to add?
Oh, this was fun. Did anybody not own any of the notes that we were talking about?
I don't own the Dixie.
I didn't own all of them, no.
Oh, okay. You didn't? Okay. I think that would have been interesting to see. Every note that we mentioned, I know I had. I couldn't recall a note that I didn't.
I'm looking at what we talked about, and I don't own the Dixie note. So, and that ought to tell you, if you're in my price point, folks, you've seen some of the notes that I put out there on video. I'm not ashamed of it. That's what I can afford. It's what I want. That's what I'm going to get. And you can go up from there. I mean, you want to get a gem, uncirculated, fancy star, your budget's much higher. That's great. Go after that. Go after that rare combo signature combination. Do it. You know what?
That was the whole point I was making. I am not an extremely wealthy individual, and yet every note we talked about is part of my collection. And you're missing all but one of those notes. So yeah, these are very much accessible notes to the average collector.
You bet.
Three price points, sometimes four, really. So anything else to add, gentlemen?
Nope. Totally enjoyed doing this. This was a lot of fun.
It is for me. So that's all I
Thanks
care
for
about.
watching.
It's all about me. Again, yes, thank you as always, gentlemen. It has been my sincere honor and pleasure, and I do mean that despite my sarcasm all the time. I really do. I really do. We will see you next time, folks. Thanks for stopping by. They should have Ontario sign off. Do your sign off, Ontario.
Thanks for stopping by.